What's up, guys? It's Liberty Lover 81 with a mini knife review. Today I'm going to show you the latest iteration of Spyderco's Native 5. This comes with the CPM S110V stainless steel, along with the blue purple semi-translucent G10 scales. They are, the camera obviously doesn't do them any justice. In sunlight, they're really badass looking. You can kind of see through the knife. And it's just something, completely different. Sort of similar to, if any of you have ever owned a paramilitary too, with the Digicam scales, where you can kind of see through certain parts of the handle. It's the same thing with this knife, and obviously you can't really see it with this shitty camera. So, in any case, first impressions with the knife, I've only had this specific one for 2 days, but I've handled one about 2 weeks ago. My cousin came over to help me put my grill together, and came in a huge box. We actually used his knife to break down all the cardboard, and it performed exceptionally well and is still hair popping afterwards. So that right there was the driving impetus behind me picking this guy up. It really pushed me over the edge because of the performance of it. And cardboard is extremely aggressive material, cutting medium. There were no scratches on the blade, which I was really surprised. So very impressed with that knife's performance. This knife, I have not done anything with it other than, test the initial sharpness, and initial sharpness out of the box is atom splitting. This, I kid you not, is literally the sharpest production knife I've ever received out of the box. The hair literally flies off when you're push cutting it off your arm. It push cuts phone book paper and hardly makes any sound. Same with the receipt paper. So really high level of sharpness off from the get-go. Very impressed with that. As you can see here, the bevels on both sides of the blade are perfect. They're not too steep, they're not too narrow, they're just perfect. And these look like the same bevels as my cousin's knife, and they were about 18 degrees. I know because I took his knife, I touched it up on my KME. Not touched it up, I actually reprofiled it. Took it down to 17 degrees, and let me tell you something. Just taking it down 1 degree per side was a bear. I've read in some forums that this steel isn't very difficult to work with. From my experience, I found it to be the contrary. The sharpening system, I have is a KME, and I have the 100 grit extra coarse, the 140 grit extra coarse, the 300 grit coarse, down to the the fine and the extra fine. So just to get it down to the apex with the 100 grit took me about, I don't know, like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I thought it was going to be a lot easier because I have reprofiled other steels, including M4, and even taking two to 3 degrees off per side with that 100 grit stone, it's not a problem. This is definitely the hardest steel I've ever had to work with. I've dealt with D2, M390, CTS 204, and this really takes the cake. So it's a testament to its wear resistance. Okay, so here are the pros about this knife. Obviously, I went a little bit into the steel. On paper and based on what I read, the CPM S110V, it's going to be highly wear resistant, has a really high chromium content, so that's going to help a lot as far as corrosion resistance is concerned. So you don't have to keep babying and oiling the blade since it's not coated. This specific example I have came perfectly centered. Whoever put this knife together, or whoever factory worker in the Golden, Colorado factory, they made it their goal that day to seriously put together a perfect piece, perfectly centered. All the lines on this knife, there are just no flaws. It is literally a perfect production knife. And at the price point that I paid, I'm more than happy. As you see here, the juncture between the where the back lock meets the back tang of the blade, it's seamless. It's very smooth opening and closing. This has what I would say is, and other people have described some Axis knives Axis lock knives to this. They say it's got a hydraulic feel. Well, this knife for a lockback has that same kind of feel. It's consistent throughout the opening motion, and it has a really good self-close as well. This is the mid-lock or the back lock perfected. You see here, everything is nicely finished inside. All the surfaces are chamfered or polished. You see that the liners are skeletonized. Perfect all the way. I do not have a free hand to demonstrate this, but there's absolutely no up and down play on this knife, which is the most important thing to me. You know, some knives, especially my Benchmade Axis lock knives, I don't mind a little bit of horizontal play, but to me, any knife with a vertical play, especially a frame lock or an axis lock, is definitely not a properly functioning knife, and this has none whatsoever. This has no side-to-side play whatsoever either. So very pleased with the solidity of this knife. This knife, even though it's only about 7 inches overall, feels really solid. You know, there's really not much I can say about it that would be deemed negative, but if there was, it's something that's, unfortunately, it's inherent to backlock knives, is that it's back heavy. You know, I love the feel of a nicely balanced knife. As a matter of fact, I actually kind of prefer when knives are a little blade heavy. There's just something about that. This is the total opposite, but that's something you got to live with this locking mechanism. It's definitely back heavy. I think going forward, this is the 5th iteration of the Native series. If Spyderco goes goes with either G10 or carbon fiber, but goes linerless, that's going to help with the balance of it. Maybe, I don't know how prohibitively expensive it's going to make the assembly, but maybe make this this unit here, the spring housing, make it out of like a lighter metal, maybe titanium, maybe even make it out of G10. I don't know if that's feasible, but it's just something to create a more balanced feel with this knife that would take this knife to EDC perfection. I'm just trying to think of any other points I want to make about it. Oh, another really cool thing about this knife, I hate it when I get a knife and you got like a really beefy pivot, and then the rest of the assembly screws, they're really small, and they're like T6 or T5 Torx screws. And these are all T8s, so you don't ever have to worry about stripping these. The main pivot screw, it's a T10, and this is the bushing pivot, so you can really tighten this down as much as you want, similar to the original run of the paramilitary 2s, and you're not gonna over tighten to the point where it's gonna be a bear to open and close. That's really cool. I think it's a great innovation on Spyderco's part. The back lock tension, it's non-existent. It's solid, but it doesn't take much effort to open and close that, and for such a solid knife, that's really impressive. Ostensibly, you can see there's a 4-position, you can do tip up, tip down, left, right carry. This knife is perfectly suited for ambidextrous use. And let me show you the insides here. As I mentioned earlier, everything is polished. All the internals and all the corners are chamfered or rounded off. I'm very impressed with this knife. For a knife that you can pick up pretty much from any online retailer, I get my knives from Knife Center. Great people over there, by the way. For a knife that you can pick up for around $150, it's one of those no-brainers. With this knife, it's kind of polarizing. You're either in the camp of hating the ergonomics or absolutely loving them. I obviously am in the camp of loving them. I love the options of being able to choke up for more detailed tasks, or if you need more reach, going back a little bit. You don't have a full 4-finger grip, but you still have maybe 3.5, and it's not the most comfortable, but you do have the option should you require the additional blade length. So all in all, I give this knife, you know, a 9.5 out of 10. I'm just gonna. The only knock again is the imbalanced feel. That's something inherent to the lock. It has nothing to do with the production of the knife. Production-wise, this knife is absolutely perfect. It is absolutely perfect. And one last point I want to make, as far as taking the G10 on this is really aggressive, which is a good thing. The drawback, you would think, is that it's going to be a pain in the ass to take in and out of your pocket, but it's not. Even coming out of putting it into your basketball shorts, for instance, I thought it was going to be a real pain in the ass getting it out. It wasn't. It goes in and out smoothly, which is kind of inexplicable, but it happens to be the case. So, again, very, very impressed with this knife. I would absolutely recommend it if you're in the market for a, you know, a small but robust, beefy EDC. Comes in about 4 ounces.
Stop kicking me.
So, I'm sorry, you got the kids not getting along in the background, but yeah, you know, if you like the video, comment, or if you have any questions, go ahead and you can private message me. And I hope you like the video, guys. Take care.